Many people know the story of when the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina, how he left Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu in his place, and the people of Quraysh who had plotted to kill him that same night waited there all night. The Prophet ﷺ recited the opening verses of Surah Yasin, and he escaped right in front of them and they were not able to see. But people don't know what happened after that. They know that the Prophet ﷺ left and he went to Mount Thawr and from there traveled. But when these people saw that it's morning time, the Prophet ﷺ has not come out of his house, let's go see what's happening, and they found Ali radiallahu anhu there, and they demanded from him that he tells them where the Prophet ﷺ is. Ali radiallahu anhu did not tell them. So some narrations mention that they grabbed him and they started beating him, and they took him all the way to the Kaaba. Abu Jahl, in the meantime, went to the Prophet ﷺ's best friend's house, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Of course, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had accompanied the Prophet ﷺ that night. So who opened the door? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's elder daughter, Asmaa radiallahu anha, opened the door. And Abu Jahl, in a very rude and rough way, asked her, "Where is your father?" So she said, "How should I know? Or why should I tell you?" So Abu Jahl, who was already frustrated, embarrassed, and in a rage, he slapped Asma radiallahu anha. He hit her so hard that he broke the earring in her ear and it went flying. But she did not respond to this. Instead, she quietly went inside and closed the door. Later on, that same day or that same night, Asma radiallahu anha prepared food, and along with her brother, she went off to the place where the Prophet ﷺ was and brought food for him. And like this, each night she would go with her brother to the cave of Thawr and bring the food there in the darkness of the night. And on one of the days, because she did not have enough things to tie the food, and time was of the essence, she took her waistband or belt, like a cloth that they would normally tie around their waist, and she quickly ripped it in half and left half around her stomach, tied it around her waist, and the other half she used to tie up the food. When the Prophet ﷺ saw that the food that has come is tied with Asma's belt or waistband, he called her Dhatun Nitaqain, the girl that has two belts. Because it was one belt, but she tore it in half and used half of it to tie the food. So this became her title, Dhatun Nitaqain, the girl with two belts. She was married to Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu, who was one of the Ashara Mubashara, one of the great Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ. And she underwent many difficulties for the sake of Islam. That slap that she received in the face from Abu Jahl was not the only hardship that she endured. In fact, after moving to Medina, Zubair radiallahu anhu did not have much. He had one camel and one horse. Much later, the Prophet ﷺ gave him a piece of land that he could take care of, in which there were date trees and so on. But the land was quite a distance from her house. And she took upon herself the responsibility of caring for the horse and the camel of Zubair radiallahu anhu. So she would go fetch water and carry the water, and sometimes the bucket that she had, it would rip, and she would repair the bucket, and she would go all the way to that piece of land where the dates were and gather the pits of the dates, carry them on her head, walk all this distance, grind them, crush them, then feed those dates, pits to the animals. And like this, in a very tight, impoverished condition, she spent the first many years of her life in Medina. Now something very interesting happened. Because she didn't have much, and she always wanted to spend in the path of Allah, she had this difficulty, so she would be very careful when spending, very, very cautious about it. The Prophet ﷺ learned that she spends like this, very, very carefully. So he said, "Oh Asma, don't count when you spend. Stop counting. And if you start counting when you spend in the path of Allah, then Allah will start counting when He gives to you. If you spend in small measured amounts, then Allah is also going to give you in small measured amounts." So from that day she stopped counting and she started spending, even though they didn't have much. But the beautiful thing is, as soon as she started this, all of a sudden Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiyallahu anhu started getting wealthy. And he got wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And when he passed away, he had so much wealth. He was one of the wealthiest people of that time. He was a multi-billionaire when he left this world. So Asmaa radiallahu anha understood that the secret to gaining from the treasures of Allah is by giving and by spending. And many times her faith was put to the test. One of those times when she was extremely hungry and thirsty and did not have anything, and she was there at her home, and they had a neighbor, a Jewish neighbor, who was cooking food, and she smelt the fragrance of the food and it drove her crazy, and she was about to give birth to one of her sons, and the smell drove her crazy. She said, "What do I do?" So she narrates this herself, that I went to that neighbor's house to ask for some fire for my stove, even though I didn't need fire for my stove. I was hoping that maybe they might just ask me if I wanted something to eat. So I went, they didn't ask me anything, and I came back home. Then I found another excuse to go back, and so I went back. Maybe this time they'll ask me. And I came back again empty-handed. The third time I went again with another excuse, and they still didn't ask me. I came home and started crying, and I started making dua to Allah. "Oh Allah, what do I do about this? This hunger is so severe, and this smell is driving me crazy, and I've done whatever I could. Oh Allah, you find some way for me to fill my belly." The Jewish neighbor, the man, came home, and when he saw that his wife had cooked this delicious meal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in his heart, he said, "I swear I'm not going to take a bite of this food until you go and give some to Zubair's wife." And the next thing Asmaa radiallahu anha knows, there is the neighbor's wife with this bowl of food, delicious food that had been driving her crazy, and she brings it to her and says, "Please eat this, because until you eat it, my husband's not going to eat." So these were people who had, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had tested them in many, many different ways, but they persevered. And today we look at them as our models, as our examples for everything in life, for any event, any situation, any circumstance that presents itself, no matter how difficult it may seem. One of the things that we should keep in mind is that there is always a model to follow in that particular situation in life. We have models in our occasions of happiness and also in our occasions of sorrow. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to follow in their footsteps. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad.